you know, when we when we look at what's going on, about a year ago, I got really, really concerned because as political science and business major at Miami University, you learn a lot. You understand about world governance and watching political powers fail, things like that. And so I was very concerned about some of the things that we were seeing, the extreme and extraordinary partisan politics take place, and the possible relinquishing of rights and freedoms. And in 2020, I was working one of our polling locations, and there was this elderly lady. Her name was Miss Pearl, and she was talking to me about 1964 and her work and her activism in the Voting Rights Act and getting that passed in 65. And I said, well, how are you feeling about right now? Because we're in really long lines, a lot of things were happening. And she said, I'm just really, really upset. She says, I'm just so tired that we're still having the same conversation. And so for that reason, and also with my dad marching in civil rights, those are the reasons that I'm here. Protecting the sanctity of our freedom to vote is absolutely imperative. We've got a situation where right now partisan politics are coming before the people, where decisions are not being made constitutionally based or lawfully. When we look at redistricting and the mandate that 74.89% of us said that we wanted redistricting, we wanted fair and square districts, we did not get that. My opponent did everything he could to obstruct that process and had 7 failed unconstitutional maps. And this is not the way that democracy is to be handled. We've got to first follow the law and be constitutionally aware and follow it. The law is to make sure that every one of our citizens has an unencumbered right to the ballot. And that is absolutely imperative, it's important and necessary.
Thank you very much. Okay. I saw someone sit down. You have a name? Okay, that's what I thought. Very good. Thank you very much. Going down my list, I'm coming to Pat DeWine and Marilyn Zayas, who are running for Justice of the Supreme Court. I have Mr. DeWine going first, if he's here. He is not here. Okay. Marilyn Zayas, you're up. Again, you have 3 minutes. I'm sorry you had to rush in fast.
That's okay. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Yes, hi, good morning. It's such an honor to be here. I'm Judge Marilyn Zayas, and I am on your ballot for Ohio Supreme Court, and I am the candidate with gumption who is running against the governor's son. I'm also the candidate that really came out of nowhere in 2016. I had no political background whatsoever, had never run for anything, didn't know anything about politics, but I ran in 2016 for the Court of Appeals because of my passion for the law. My passion for the law was rooted back when I was a teenager, and I was accompanying my mom to the court, to family court, to protect my brother, and that's when I realized the courts have such a profound effect on people's lives. In 16, I ran because I was really kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. Sometimes you're in front of a great judge and you know that that judge is really following the rule of law, and you can explain the outcome to your clients, and sometimes you have a different experience. So in 16, when I was elected, I knew what my job was to be. As a Court of Appeals judge, we sit with 3 judges on every panel. My first day on the court, I wrote 2 dissents explaining why the majority was not following the law. Now that was a big moment. I didn't realize it at the time because the reality is that I was going to run again in 2018, and I was told, keep your head down, Marilyn, don't make any waves. Well, that was not exactly keeping my head down. That was doing the job that I was hired to do. I'm also the person that grew up in one of those neighborhoods that was completely devastated by drugs and by crime. Grew up in family circumstances where if you were to say dysfunctional, I'd say thank you, that's an elevation. But my mom was a very strong mother, and she taught us that the only inheritance she had for us was an education. And so she raised a police officer. who served for 20 years until he was hit by a drunk driver. While he was on duty, she raised 2 teachers, and she raised her only daughter, who was the smartest one, who came to Ohio 34 years ago to work for Procter & Gamble. Now I'm running for the Ohio Supreme Court because it is really time to take politics out of our court. You cannot have fairness without integrity. You just can't. And we need to restore the confidence in our court. And do you know how you do that? You do that by what my judicial reputation is, which is faithfully applying the law equally to everyone and the Constitution equally to everyone, independent of outside influences and independent of politics. So you know you have a lot of important races in front of you in November. I ask you to vote the whole ballot from A to Z. And when you get to Z, just remember that Z is for Zayas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on. For Representative to Congress for the 10th District, Mr. Esrati is up.
Hi, I'm David Esrati, and I am not a political candidate. I am a sacrificial lamb. I am running in a gerrymandered district that has been given 10 times to our current Congressman, Mike Turner. I'm not kidding about that given. The closest anybody has come has been 14 points. That's a blowout. So, why am I doing it? I'm doing it because in 1993, I ran for mayor of Dayton. So did Mike Turner. And I saw firsthand the evolution of Mike Turner from, quote, community activist to career politician. There isn't a defense contractor this man doesn't love. There isn't an American citizen he cares one iota about, including all of you. Because if you're diabetic, he's perfectly okay with you spending $1,000 a month on insulin. He's perfectly okay if you're a veteran that you don't get help for being exposed to burn pits. Mike Turner has been given and has never had to work for his congressional seat. And this time around, he doesn't even care. He shamelessly has accepted 79% of his donations from out of state, including backing of 19 billionaires. Can I see a show of hands of how many people are here know a billionaire? How many of you know 19 billionaires? I'll tell you what Mike Turner has done for you in the last 20 years. While he sits there and blames the Biden administration for inflation, during Mike Turner's time where he has not enforced antitrust, he has not worked on executive pay, he hasn't worked on anything to support the common working man. What has happened is we've gone from 300 billionaires in this country to 600 billionaires. Now let me tell you something. There is nobody working that deserves to be paid $1 billion. Wake up, folks. That's a lot of zeros. You know what they do with their money? And what we need to fix? Right here. Defund politicians. That's what we need to do. We would be better off if we just paid for their campaigns and took all the money out of it. It would be considerably cheaper. They spent $15 billion. $15 billion. We could have spent that on charity. We could have built a few insulin plants for that and given this stuff away. I mean, come on. The district is unconstitutional. It's been unconstitutional. You've got a man who hasn't had a town hall in 20 years. So what do? Every day I go online at 4 p.m. on YouTube and I talk to the people. And you can interact with me. And I plan on doing it once I am in Congress because that's my job, to represent you. Not to sit there and do work for defense contractors. Now, speaking of doing work, I've got clients in this room. Rick Corral. I'm driving too late, but I'm a local businessman. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, moving on to State Representative for the 70th District, Mr. Brian Lampkin.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Beavercreek Women's League for organizing the event and the Beavercreek Township Fire Department for hosting and the use of their facilities. My name is Brian Lampton and I'm running for re-election to the new State House District 70 here in Greene County. I'm a Beavercreek business owner, and I do consider it an honor and a privilege to serve for you in the State House. As a freshman legislator, I've sponsored 10 bills. 6 of them have been passed and signed into law, including a Department of Defense priority bill. This bill cut red tape by making it easier for military families to enroll their children in school as they're transferred in and out of Ohio. Another bill we did gave county auditors the ability to provide property tax relief to homeowners. Another bill we did provided consumer protections from insolvent insurance companies. And we also did a workers' comp bill that gave clear guidelines to employee injuries while working from home. Like 2 years ago, I've been endorsed by the Ohio Chamber, the NFIB, Ohio Right to Life, and the NRA. My main priority is to pass my distracted driving bill. We must make distracted driving a priority offense and start the culture change of distracted driving. At least 40 other states have initiated this, similar legislation. After 2 years of making it a priority, we see fatal crashes reduced by 25 to 30%. So this bill will save lives. I believe we can and should do more to reduce burdensome regulations and taxes. We need to increase our resources to schools and public safety. We also need to address the mental health problems folks are dealing with. Ohio currently has more jobs than actual workers to fill those jobs. So we need to focus on our youngsters, make sure they're mentally healthy and prepared with the skills needed to fill these jobs. Folks, on a personal note, Karen and I live in Beavercreek with our 2 German Shepherds. I still announce football and basketball for Beavercreek. My son Joe is actually a firefighter for the township, Beavercreek Township. And my daughter is at SeaWorld in Florida, doing fine. She didn't get hit by the hurricane, taking care of penguins at SeaWorld. Once again, my name is Brian Lampkin, and I ask for your support this November. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, going down my list, I come to Eric Price.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Dayton Women's League for putting this on. I'm going to spend my time talking to you about a local hero. I'm going to be surprised if most of you don't know her name. It's General Janet Wolfenbarger. I had the fortunate opportunity to be her security lead when she was promoted on June 5th, 2012. If you know General Wolfenbarger, she kind of had a presence to her, and she had this presence that almost brought a peace to the room. I saw her walk in the room so many times, and people that were, kind of fighting or, didn't really agree with each other, she kind of had a natural way about her that kind of brought peace to everyone, and we all got to work together. That was kind of one of the magical things about her. It was 2012, and she was the first 4-star general that was a woman for the Air Force, and it was about time to have that. So me working as a security lead for her was kind of difficult. 3 years prior, 3 years and 3 days exactly, I was deployed in Iraq, and I had lost my daughter to a medical accident. It was the day before her 3rd birthday. She was the only other person that had ever displayed that ability to bring peace to people. My daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, would walk in the room. Even my 2 German Shepherds would be subject to her commanding presence, and she would instantly calm them down. I saw that in General Wolfenbarger, and it inspired me. Now, my other daughter, she's 27 years old. She just told me that she's not making the same amount of money as a male counterpart in her office. And so she's leaving that job. And fortunately, we have an economy where she can do that. I support her in that, but there's a lot of equality that is not occurring. There's not a level playing field for women as there is for men. That's why we're here. That's why women's voices are so important. That's why You guys sponsor this to highlight those candidates that are going to look out for your interests. That's my job, or that's the job I want, because my daughters need that level playing field in the same manner that every other male in this world has. And it's time for us to end that inequity. I want you to support me to try to do that as I'm running for state representative. I thank you for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Price. All right. I'm going to, according to my agenda, county commissioner is up next, but I think I'm going to go to the judges since they're all right over here in a line, and come to Mr. Lewis. Ron Lewis is running for judge of the Court of Appeals.
Well, good morning. On behalf of Judge Kate Huffman and Judge Mike Tucker and myself, I would like to thank the members of the Beavercreek Women's Club for putting on this event today. Judge Huffman cannot be here this morning. She's in the middle of a murder trial in Montgomery County. She currently sits as a common pleas court judge. She has been on the bench in Montgomery County for the past 19 years as a common pleas court judge and is seeking her first term on the 2nd District Court of Appeals. Judge Tucker is our administrative judge at the Court of Appeals, and he is conducting job interviews this morning and could not be here. Judge Tucker has been on the Court of Appeals for 12 years. Before that, he was a common pleas court judge for 12 years, and he also sends his regrets. I am, fortunately, I could be here today. I am on the 2nd District Court of Appeals. I'm asking for your support to be elected in the fall. Before I went to the 2nd District Court of Appeals, I was a Xenia Municipal Court judge. Before sitting on the municipal bench, I was a prosecutor for that court for 19 years, representing 13 different police agencies. I'm a lifelong resident of Greene County. Grew up on a farm that I now live on between Cedarville and Xenia with my wife, Amy. You will hear from in a minute, who's the current juvenile court judge. We had 4 children. I am very proud to serve on the 2nd District Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals, for most people, is what we call the court of last resort. Most cases are never appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court doesn't have to accept every case. The Court of Appeals does. Therefore, we hear what I call it's the last ditch effort for most people, either a civil case or a criminal case for the case to be heard. I am very honored to serve this district, which encompasses Champaign, Clark, Greene, Miami, Montgomery, and Dorrit counties, and be happy to answer absolutely any questions that anybody may have at the appropriate time. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. And I'm reminded that if you don't ask a question, audience, you won't have any answers. So far, we have only one question being posed to one of our collectors. So please raise your hand if you have a question, and someone will come with a 3-5 card for you to fill out. Thank you. Okay, and now I'm going to skip Mr. Gould and go to Adolfo Tomichio, who is running for Judge of the Court of Common Pleas. He's disconcerted because I inserted him.
Good morning. I want to thank the Beavercreek Women's League for hosting this Candidates and Issues Forum this morning. The things I want to talk about this morning are my judicial philosophy and why I'm running for judge this November. In regards to my judicial philosophy, it's judicial restraint, not activism. A judge should never legislate from the bench. If you want to write laws, then I suggest you run for Congress or the General Assembly, but not judge. Why am I running? As a felony level prosecutor for Greene County, I have had multiple jury trials in the General Division, ranging from murder and felonious assault and drug offenses and just about everything in between. I exclusively prosecuted all the felony OVIs in Greene County, along with the aggravated vehicular homicides and vehicular assault cases as well. From serving as an assistant Greene County prosecuting attorney, a mayor's court prosecutor, acting municipal law director for the city of Xenia, private practice, and now as your judge for the past 7 years, first as juvenile and now as general division judge. I have the background that provides me not only with the understanding of the law, but the real world understanding of how our judicial system may impact the people who come before the court and our communities as well. As judge, I know that doing justice is more than making well-reasoned, legally sound decisions. Doing justice requires building respect for the rule of law, protecting due process, and ensuring the safety of our communities. These are the reasons why I am running. Personally, I was raised in Beavercreek and graduated from Beavercreek High School in 1988. I went to Wright State and graduated from the University of Toledo College of Law. I'm married to my much better half, Heather, and we have a 12-year-old daughter, and I would appreciate earning your support. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Amy Lewis would come to the podium, please. She is running for Judge of the Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Division.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and why I want to continue being the Greene County Juvenile Court Judge. I've been very fortunate. I was appointed to this position in March of 21 by Governor Mike DeWine. Prior to being the judge in that court, I was a magistrate for 20 years, and about 5 of those years I was the court administrator. I knew when I was in law school that I wanted to use my law degree in a way that could help children and families. And I've been very fortunate over the years that I've been given that opportunity. Now, when you think about juvenile court encompasses much more than just being in the courtroom and handling juvenile-specific cases like abuse, neglect, and dependency cases, which unfortunately can result in permanent custody hearings taking place, which is the equivalent of the death penalty for parents. We also have delinquency cases that unfortunately can result in kids sometimes being bound over as adults and serious youthful offender cases happening. Or you might have a simple unruly case, but it's really not so simple because you need to figure out why is this child continuing to run away from home or engage in drug use that is escalating or simply just not going to school. So in court, there's a lot more as a juvenile judge than just being in the courtroom. There's a lot of administrative responsibilities as well. And with that, it comes, I have a juvenile detention center. It's a 32-bed facility. And we work really hard to keep kids out of detention with programming. So we have a number of alternatives to detention. But I also run a clerk's office because I'm considered the clerk of court, so I'm responsible for all the filings and making sure our case management system works. I wrote a grant and it allowed us to provide electronic filing so we can have better access to justice for people so they don't have to come in during traditional hours. The Miami Valley Juvenile Rehabilitation Center is a residential facility for felony offenders, and the day-to-day operation, I'm responsible for that. We are really working hard to do more preventative work with families and children, so that's why I wrote a grant so we could have an assessment center. And let me tell you, the mental health services in the community are so needed because a lot of the families and kids that we see, we need to figure out the root problem of what's going on. So I'm very thankful that we have a great support system with, for instance, the Mental Health and Recovery Board, Family Violence Prevention Center, Children's Services, Family and Children First. Without all of these community partners and the collaboration that needs to take place as a juvenile judge, these services wouldn't be provided to the families that we work with. So I appreciate your support. I hope you'll vote for me, and we can continue to do all the good work that we're doing at the court. And I look forward to any questions you might have about what we do out at the court as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's have Mr. Gould, who is running for County Commissioner.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Beavercreek Women's League for having this forum. It's always been a great forum even before I was in politics. I'm Dick Gould. I'm seeking my second term as commissioner. And I think the first thing to do is tell people what commissioners do, because people think that we do everything. And primarily the county commission is a fiscal body. We do a lot of approvals of budgets and the like, and we dispense a lot of money. Which goes back to my background. I am a certified public accountant, and that serves me well in that capacity. The largest issues that we are facing at this point, and I think everyone is facing them, are workforce, having people to fill jobs, childcare, having funds so that our workers can have affordable childcare, and workforce housing. It's gotten to the point that a new home starts in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, and many people can't afford those. I serve on the board of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, and we are working with the state legislature to find answers to that. The board had a symposium approximately a month ago. We brought in people from specialists from all over the state to address those issues. As a sitting commissioner, one of our biggest accomplishments is one that we just did this year, was to find a way to build a county jail, a jail that we've needed for, well, since at least 1989 when it went under a consent decree. The voters spoke twice, and they didn't want a tax increase, so we sat down, crunched some numbers, and found a way to fund that without an additional tax increase. I don't know if the sheriff will talk about that or not, but we are going to build a jail. We are deep into that process now. When I'm elected and take office again, one of my biggest goals, besides working on the issues I mentioned before, is to maintain the fiscal responsibility that we have. We've been a very fiscally conservative county, and we hope to maintain that. And I would appreciate your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we have Scott Angler, who is running for sheriff.
Good morning. Thank you to the Beavercreek League of Women's Voters for putting on this. Again, it's a great opportunity to be here. It's an honor and privilege to be your sheriff. As most of you know in the room, I became sheriff last November after some tragic circumstances, and I was a chief deputy at the Greene County Sheriff's Office at the time. I'm a 38-year law enforcement member. I've done all kinds of different types of assignments during my 38 years in law enforcement. I started out as a dispatch for the State Patrol back in 1985 and have just continued on through. But I have lots of experience in lots of areas within law enforcement in my 38-year career. I've done command of all the patrol, the investigative sections, and the administrative sections. I am a member of the Mental Health and Recovery Board, which I've been a member for 11 years as a volunteer part of my duties. So I am in support of the issue for renewal for the Mental Health and Recovery Board on a personal level. The last 5 years, before becoming chief deputy for Sheriff Gene Fisher, I got to be the director of the Greene County Drug Task Force. Through my 38 years, I've built great relationships with lots of people in law enforcement all around the county. That 5-year period gave me an even better chance to get to know all of our state and other local and federal partners and have great relationships to share resources with them to continue on to do the duties of sheriff. So one of my strong suits as sheriff is I have great relationships, and I know most of those people on a first name basis, and we can get things done rather quickly sometimes because of those collaborations. So I'm very proud of that. One of my biggest philosophies as sheriff is going to be to protect victims. One of the things I want to do next year is I want to ramp up our efforts in domestic violence, quick response to overdoses, and taking care of families who are struggling with the drug addiction of family members. We are going to build a new jail that is on its way. Spring or summer of next year, we should move dirt start to move dirt. It's very important to our county. We're a 170,000 person county. We need this jail very badly. We've needed it for decades, and we're going to make that happen. We're going to continue to recruit and retain the best staff possible. My group of people that we have working at the Sheriff's Office and the command staff are doing a great job, and we have a great team. I always say the most important thing about ability is availability. So I do think I have the abilities to be your sheriff, and I will continue to be available to you and my staff to be available to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We greatly appreciate the fact that so many of our people here today are running unopposed, and it's really very valuable to hear their opinions as well. So I thank you all. Now we're moving on to issues. We have two constitutional amendment issues available for your vote. I don't think anyone's here to address issue 1, is there? Would you like to? All right, come right up. The same format as 2, you have 3 minutes.
I'll be very brief, but I think it's very important that I get up here and talk about issue 1. Issue 1 is a common sense issue that's going to require our judges, our local judges, to be involved in the decision making for bail. I just can't understand why it would be a better idea to not give that ability to the judges. It's very common sense. They take into consideration the record of the person, their likelihood to appear in court, their danger to the public, and those are just all kinds of things that I am very confident with the great prosecutors that we have to make the recommendation, the great judges we have that can make those common sense decisions at their bench on what needs to be done. I just think, I think we're seeing across the country the effects of some of these laws and the activist judges, as we talked about before. I think it's important who we put into our Supreme Court, and I totally agree that that ability should be taken away from the Supreme Court on those rules and be brought back to a local level. So I 100% support issue 1.
Thank you. Issue 2 is another constitutional amendment issue, and we have Kim McCarthy who would like to address that.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm here to speak against issue 2. I'm going to start by reading a portion of the statement by Brian Houch, who's the council president of the village of Yellow Springs, who is the village that passed the ordinance that has, I guess that's where issue 2 has sprung from. He delivered this to the members of the State and Local Government Committee back in May of 22. For some municipalities, incorporating the perspectives of non-US citizen residents by allowing them to vote for their local representatives and on local issues adds value to the municipality as a whole. These active and engaged community members pay taxes, own businesses, have children who attend our schools. They are part of the fabric of our communities. Ohio is a home rule state. And I just want to pause in reading in case you don't know what that means that Ohio has adopted the principles that each level of government has a separate realm of authority. Just like Sheriff Ango is just saying, he thinks that local rule is what we need for issue 1. And I'm saying that's exactly what we need for issue 2 as well. You don't get to pick and choose the activity that home rule applies to. It applies to everything. It's not a new thing for municipalities. There's 15 municipalities and 4 other home rule states that have adopted laws that apply only to them. Greene County Board of Elections has confirmed the ability to manage these differing ballots. This issue is a proper issue for local control because it does not affect any other jurisdiction other than the municipality involved. There is no negative impact from allowing these community members to vote on local issues, so there is no need to amend Ohio's constitution. Without a problem to solve, it is incumbent upon our state legislatures to preserve the principles of home rule, understanding that the Buckeye State is a diversity of municipalities with varying values and cultures. All right, so that's part of Brian's testimony. But one of the aspects he does not mention is that this issue is going to prevent our 17-year-olds who normally vote in the primary in that year when they turn 18 before the general, they will no longer be allowed to do that. Voters who come of age should be encouraged to participate, not removed from it. This is a solution looking for a problem. Power should reside locally, not in Columbus. It doesn't mean every locality has to do that, but it does mean they get to choose for themselves. These are legal residents of our country, hardworking members of the community, and they pay taxes, yet they have no representation. And I myself have been in that exact same spot when I was a resident. So I urge vote no on issue 2. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have several local issues as well. Issue 8 is a proposed tax levy, a renewal for Greene County, and Greta Mayer would like to address that issue.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to address you, and I thank the Beavercreek Women's League. My name is Dr. Greta Mayer, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Mental Health Recovery Board of Clark, Greene, and Madison counties. So we're asking for your support to vote yes for mental health. This is a straight renewal. It's a 1.5 mil property tax levy. We're asking to keep the same services and supports in place that we have right now and lock this in again for the next 10 years. What we've been able to do, which I think you'd be interested in, is capitalize on competitive grants statewide and at the federal level to bring in more resources and increase access points for young people and older people alike in Greene County by 44%. So we've increased providers with whom we contract and services in Greene County for the same level of services that you're paying for right now. You may wonder, what is that? You're paying less than $30 a year of your property taxes, and that's for a $100,000 property value. For those of you that you may have a specific ask and want to know what the exact amount is, our Greene County Auditor, David Graham, has a great website you can go to and calculate exactly what that means for you and your property value. Again, it's no new taxes, it's a 10-year levy, and while we cover 3 counties, Clark, Greene, and Madison, this is just to benefit Greene County residents. The 1.5 mils is only to benefit Greene County, our youngest residents and our oldest, and everyone in between. We're an administrative body, and we distribute the funding through contracts, and we oversee quality, we oversee health and wellness and safety for our housing programs, employment supports, counseling, psychiatry, and all kinds of other things. So that's 13 care providers that you'll recognize their name on my handout. There's a number of them there, and you'll recognize many of those service providers. Through dollars, there's prevention services in school. There are housing supports, like I said. There are advocacy services for those with mental illness. And I thank the Women's League also for showing the ballot language. I included that in my handout so you know what to expect, what your vote is for. It says operation, maintenance, and financing. So again, we administer the contracts and we look for those service providers to deliver quality care for you and your family members and neighbors who have mental health concerns. And truly, most individuals like us, I'm sure you know people in your community and your family that have mental health concerns, and we want to identify those folks as early as possible and get them to the support that they need. Pathways to care for everyone and every family in Greene County. And beyond the contract care providers with whom we work, we have a number of partnerships, and many of them spoke here today. Judge Lewis in juvenile court, Sheriff Anger, the commission. We work collaboratively with public and private entities to increase services for you. We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, issue 9 is a very specific issue, and Mr. Gould has agreed to address it.
Issue 9 applies only to the unincorporated areas of the county. It's gas aggregation. Many of you who live in the townships now know that we have the ability to do electric aggregation. So when AES came through and said we're going to double our rate, those of you that were on the county's gas or electric aggregation plan actually in May got a lower rate. I think we're at 4.4 cents per kilowatt hour, and I think AES is pushing 10 or 11 cents. So what this does is allows those in the unincorporated areas to have gas aggregation. So if you're on natural gas, we would seek to go out and try to get a contract where we can get a lower rate. Some of the things that about this, it's very similar to the electric aggregation. It's just for the unincorporated areas. If you live in the city of Beavercreek, the city of Beavercreek would have to go out and do that on their own. The way the legislation is written, we can only affect those unincorporated areas, which are the townships. Palmer Energy will be our broker. They're currently doing our electric aggregation, and we're locked into that rate that I just quoted to May of 2024. So again, as rates continue to skyrocket, we'll stay low. Our hope is that we can do gas aggregation. We would go out probably in the fall, or in the spring rather, and seek bids for the coming heating season for next year. You are automatically opted in, but you can opt out. There's no cost to get in. There's no penalty to get out. So if you think you have a better rate at the time, you can stay in where you are. And if your rate goes up, you can opt into whatever we have. It'll most likely be a multi-year deal, and there's some of you who may say, I don't have natural gas, I have propane. With our development growing, especially in Beavercreek Township, right now you have propane. There might be a gas line running down your street in the near future, and this would just allow you to have that option. So I would just urge you to vote yes on issue 9. Thank you.
Sounds like a win-win. Issue 10 is a proposed tax levy additional for the city of Beavercreek in referencing the police department, and Mr. Don Adams would like to address that.
Good morning. My name is Don Adamson, and in addition to several other positions I have, I've been a volunteer with the Beavercreek Police Department for 17 years. We in Beavercreek are fortunate to have a well-trained, professional, and dedicated police department. But to continue with the services we have grown to expect from our police, we need to come to you and ask for a 2.5 mil continuing levy to fund the department for today and the future. Why are we asking for a new levy? The Beavercreek Police Department is primarily funded by taxes. We have not had an increase in money since 2014. As with everything else, costs keep going up. Our current authorized strength at the police department is 50 officers. In 1995, the authorized strength was 46. Beavercreek has grown from 38,000 residents to 47,000 residents since 1995. At 50 officers, that equates to just a little bit over 1 officer per 1,000 residents. That is one of the lowest officer to resident ratios compared to other surrounding departments. The police department responded to a total of 40,541 calls last year. That's the most calls our department has ever received, and there are increasing calls for service and traffic activity associated with the 2 major shopping areas, I-675, US 35, expanding businesses and residential sectors, the proximity to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and the number of people who come into Beavercreek every day to work. Depending on the shift, there are typically 4 to 6 officers on duty at any one time. FBI studies have shown we should be at 68 sworn officers. This levy will allow us to increase our staff to 55 officers. That's still well short of where we should be, but it's a good start. Also in this proposed tax levy, we would be able to build a police station that would be adequate to accommodate the needs of the department, all of the officers, including safety, and keep everything in one place. There are records, supplies, vehicles, and equipment stored in at least 3 different locations because there is no room at the existing building. The locker rooms the officers use are totally inadequate for today's officer needs. The women's locker room is very small, and we've just added another female officer to our force, which brings us to a total of 6 with the possibility of 2 more in the next year. The lockers are high school lockers that won't even accommodate a hanger, let alone place to hang their uniform, bulletproof vests, and other gear that they need to have. We're not into defunding the police here in Beavercreek. In fact, we want to fund them so that our community can continue to be the great, safe, comfortable place to live, work, and play. For more information, you can go to the city's website, www.beavercreekohio.org.gov, or see the latest In Touch. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Issue 11 is a proposed tax levy, additional, referencing streets, roads, and bridges, and Tiffany Schwartz would like to address that for you.
First, thank you to Beavercreek Women's League, and as well as all of you here who have come to learn more about the issues that you're going to be facing in November. I'm here to discuss Beavercreek City's street levy. And with that, I would like to just start by talking about the streets that we have in Beavercreek. So we have 577 lane miles in the city of Beavercreek. To put that into perspective, if you were to take all of those lane miles and put them in a row and start in Dayton, Ohio, you could get to Kansas City, Missouri if you went west, or you could go south and that would get you to the middle of Georgia. So that's a significant number of roadways that our individuals here within the city are handling. The number of workers that we have to address that lane mileage is 23. 23 people addressing 577 lane miles. That has only increased by one person in the past 20 years. So in 2000, we had 22 street workers. Today, we have 23. Our population has grown by 23%, and our jobs, and the jobs here in the city have grown by 42% since 2000 and 2002, according to the census. That is a lot of wear and tear on our roads. So now that you have an understanding of the street situation, I'd like to discuss what the levy would impact. That's going to go towards your road maintenance. It's going to go towards repaving, snow and ice removal, and really anything that you would think of that kind of relate to the street system, such as curbs, traffic signals, traffic signs, etc. For these reasons, Beavercreek City Council voted to place an issue on a continuing levy on the ballot for $2.15 million to increase and to maintain the current level of street services. The increase would add 5 new public service workers to help address the continuing needs, and it would also eliminate a likely projected budget deficit in the near future. Additionally, this would provide additional funding for the heavily relied upon grant projects that we use to support our street maintenance. As we are all aware, inflation makes things very difficult to fund. And so when you take into consideration the level of service that we need to currently maintain, as well as the additional services that have come into play due to the growing city and the increase in the workforce, this levy is extraordinarily necessary. So with that, I would ask that you very seriously consider the street levy when you head to the ballot in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, last chance to ask a question in written format. We're about ready to take a short break and vet those questions and then pose them to our audience, our invited guests. If an invited guest has to leave, we certainly understand, and if there's something directed particularly to your office, we will see that you get the question. So I don't want to keep you beyond your legislative duties if you have some. All right, we are about to take a break. I'll see you back here, I hope. Okay, the format for our question period is you really have only 1 minute because very often the same question is posed to each of the candidates for that position, so we limit you to your time to address the issue. But I do have a question for Ms. Clark. In fact, I have 2 questions for Ms. Clark if she would like to come up here. As Secretary of State, how would you help to get fair districting in the state of Ohio? And what is your position on issue 2 and why?
Yes, I do. I'm starting with issue. Wait, 1 minute per question? Well, okay, that's fine. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Mayor. So starting with issue 2, yes, I do think that only citizens should vote. The job of the Secretary of State is to administer election law fairly and without partisanship, and unfortunately that's not what we're seeing. What I'm most concerned about is when you restrict voting eligibility through constitutional referendums like this, Given our nation's past with the Jim Crow laws of the South especially, majority manipulation of voting patterns, there is a slippery slope here, and so we've got to be extraordinarily mindful about that. My focus is on administering the law as it is now and as it will be. That's fairly, evenly, and constitutionally. The LaRoche years have been filled with examples of Secretary of State bending their powers of this office to punish people and their foes, and that needs to stop, especially under a new administration. So regarding issue 2, agree with it, but caution that it is a slippery slope. For our second question, how do we help to get fair districts? Well, first and foremost, we've got to abide by the Constitution. So in 2018, like I alluded to earlier, nearly 75% of Ohioans said, hey, we want redistricting reform. And so what that meant going into the redistricting commission, the Secretary of State is a voting member on that commission along with 6 other folks. And your job is to uphold what the will of the people is, first and foremost. It's being fiscally conservative with those dollars, and it's also about fiscal management. I'm a small business owner, and it's not been easy, especially during the pandemic. So understanding the consequences and the economic consequences of your actions and inactions while governing is absolutely imperative. So I say that because we had a special election that cost us over $20 million because we had people that obstructed the redistricting process and did not want to vote for constitutional maps. That cost us dearly, and those dollars could have gone elsewhere. So you've got to also pay attention to that and make sure that first and foremost we are adhering to the Constitution and upholding it.
Thank you very, very much. All right, this is a multifaceted question for both Brian Lampton and Eric Price. Brian, I think, had to leave, is that correct? Yes, okay. So Mr. Price, you are allowed to answer these and we'll pass them on to Brian. We'd like to know what your positions are on charter schools, vouchers, and the public system in general.
That is an awesome question. And the reason I say that is right now, I'm not totally opposed to the charter system. What I'm opposed to right now is how we fund our school system overall. I believe our Constitution says it's supposed to be funded at the state level. I believe right now the Republicans are telling us, hey, we're saving you a lot of money in state taxes because they're cutting taxes. But in reality, they are increasing your taxes because they pulled a lot of money away from schools and forced our local taxes to go up because of taking that money away. So the school has to get it from somewhere else. Where are they pulling it from? They're increasing our property taxes, in essence. The voucher system could and or would work if we funded our schools appropriately. And I think that we need to change the way we fund schools, period. I believe it has to be done at the state level. And I think that's the only way it's going to turn out to be equitable.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Esrati, would you please step forward? If you are elected, what congressional investigations would you like to see conducted in the next 2 years?
That's a different question than what I'm used to getting. But I think I'll stick with the fact that we seem to have sold Congress off. I mean, they should look like NASCAR drivers with patches on for all their sponsors. At some point, we have to get to the bottom of this auction we're running and calling it an election. So, first off, I'd like an investigation into every member of Congress that's been trading stock with privileged information. Second, I'd like to know of everyone that has family members or sent off things to their friends and family to get them to buy stock in these corporations. And lastly, I think it's really time that we have what I call a donor registration system. All of us believe in voter registration. Why is there no donor registration? Why don't you have to have a valid ID to make a donation to Congress? Because right now it's self-reported, and if you look up the guy who owns the New York Mets, he shows up 3 or 4 different ways. We need to fix that. Thank you.
Okay. Marilyn Zayas, if you would step forward, please. I don't have a sash for you, I'm sorry. No, there is not. There is a question here specific to you as to what you can start on the other side. It's large print, yes.
Both you and Chelsea Clark, I'm hoping I can read this without my readers. Both you and Chelsea Clark mentioned unconstitutional practices, and there are many. What kind of law do you
Case law.
Okay, precedent or constitution. I don't understand that part.
Well, what kind of law do you specialize in? Is constitutional law or individual case law?
I'm not sure I understand. Maybe the person who asked the question can clarify. Maybe
we could find you.
Okay. I mean, let me keep going because maybe a good example of a case law. Would you explain your position? Thank you. I think what they're asking me, I don't know, is, there's all this politicizing of how you interpret the Constitution that is out there. So I think that's what the question is. The Constitution is something that we should all be guided on, but we should truly be guided on it. So the rules shouldn't change depending on who the justices are and what their interests are as to what constitutional blessings of liberties it is that one group will have and what constitutional blessings of liberty it is that the other group will have. Ultimately, the Constitution actually had a cover letter which has been long forgotten, and the Constitution is a document that deals with the blessings of liberty, and it's also a document of concession and of collaboration. So I think what's most important as judges is to understand not only people's individual rights, but at the Court of Appeals that we should be working with each other and make sure that we are Americans first. Thank you.
Part two here also, it's really another question. Do you think the Supreme Court should come forth and talk to the state boards of education in continuing legal education? And I believe this is in reference to critical race theory being taught in the schools. Do you believe that the Supreme Court should take a position on that?
On critical race theory. Again, politics has no place with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should not be advocating for anything. However, when constitutional challenges come to the Supreme Court, they should be properly addressed. One of the things that I think the public has been frustrated about is whether the Supreme Court is properly using their authority when it comes to the contempt action. Well, keep in mind that you need at least 4 justices to be in agreement in order to use that authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those were difficult avenues to negotiate, and I appreciate your time. You may sit down. All right. On issue 1, would any of the judges like to explain their thoughts on issue 1? Why do we need this law, and are there negatives that we should think about? Would any of us?
As judges, we won't be permitted to answer the question under the judicial canons of ethics, and I apologize for that, but we can't answer that question. I wish we could. That's right.
We could address it outside of the legal jurisdictions then. Mr. Gould would like to.
Yeah, I am not a judge, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express. But the gist of that in Du Bois' decision was that public safety could not be considered in bail considerations. So issue 1 makes it legal, constitutional, to consider public safety. That's all it does.
Okay, and then my final question to be asked. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we're not able to get positions, but we certainly are able to clarify case law. And I would invite you to read the Du Bois decision. My reading of the majority is that, hey, we got 3 co-equal branches of the government. The legislature has spoken as to what the process is for setting bonds. My reading of the majority is they cited the language, the exact language that was in there by the legislature. One question that I have that I would love to be answered is, by redoing the system, and now if a bond is set that is a high bond, and that person is able to pay the bond, then what happens? What happens at that point? Because that's different than the way the system is working right now. So we have 3 co-equal branches of the government. Issue 1 is also, as I understand it, looking to divest the judiciary of some of its authority. So I would also have a question as to how is that is to work as well. I think issue 1 for me has caused some questions, and the majority legislature has spoken on this. As a judge, I am to follow the rule of law.
Okay, thank you so very much. Beavercreek tax, additional taxes. The city has repeatedly stated basic needs. I guess this has to be referred to streets and laws because this is, I'm sorry? I'm not sure that this can be answered by the levy representative, but I think that's because that's the only one with the additional taxes. Would you please come forward, Ms. Schwartz? Ms. Schwartz. Buy new lockers. Now it seems to be, I think this is a very confusing question, and I apologize to the audience for accepting it. What specific action is the city willing to take to watch over its budget?
Thank you. So unfortunately, in my position here today and talking on the street levy, I am here in my citizen capacity and not as a city council representative. So I cannot speak on what the city council does in terms of that question. So I apologize, but I'm unable to answer that at this time.
Okay, and perhaps the Mr. Adams for the police department, right? Could perhaps, or the sheriff could perhaps address how the police department saves money. Have you any idea?
I know the police department because I've been with them for a long time, watched the way they go through their budget, and they budget with what monies they have. And that's open to anybody to come and look at it. It's on the website. You can look at that for where money goes. Most of it goes to officer pay. It's about 75%, 80% goes to paying the officers.
Okay, I think the question was indefinite enough, so it was difficult to answer and difficult to pose. I thank you all for your kind attention today. I do apologize for the fact that it's being taped, but it's being taped for a private person, so it will not be replayed on the city system because they were unable to do that today for us. But I do thank you for coming, and I hope to see you again next year. It's going to be another big election year, always, locally. So thank you very much, guests and audience. We really appreciate your time, especially for those of you who came, again, unopposed. It's really nice to have you here. Thank you so very much. This concludes our day. Clap now.